Hey, welcome back. Another edition of Gonna See My Friends podcast where we hang out, revisit the movies we grew up on, the ones that shaped us, and the ones we still argue about today, huh? We break down what still hits, what doesn't, and those unforgettable scenes that just stick with you. As always, I'm usually here with Toby, but he's on assignment. And of course, we got to bring back Scott Taylor. How you doing, Scott?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm ready to do a high quality podcast here where everybody will phone home about it.
Yes. I like it. Like it a lot. Yes. This week we're doing E.T., a classic, another Spielberg. Last week we just did Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was a smash hit. The movie, not the podcast. And this week we're going to do his next movie, which is E.T. Now we're not going to be doing Spielberg every week. It just happened to fall in like this in the scheduling. But this one was a really this one has all the classic trademark Spielberg stuff. You know, his the way he makes his movies has all the things. I mean, even things after this movie like Poltergeist and which he didn't really direct, but he produced. But yeah, it just has all the classic Spielberg hits in this one. Scott, do you, I know that you had seen this probably not in theaters, or did you see it in theaters? Because they re-released it a couple times after. Did
So
you
I
see
have
this in
seen
theaters?
I
Yeah.
have seen it in the theater. I can't speak to if I saw it when it first came out because that was what 82
Yeah,
that it
82.
came out. So I would have been 2 years old. I very highly doubt that I was brought to the theater, but I do remember that this was the first VHS cassette that we owned when we purchased a
Yeah,
VCR.
yeah.
This is the movie that we purchased with it. It was E.T. I had E.T. and I had Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and that's not as
What a
exciting of a
combo. It's
yeah,
a
not
one-two
as
punch.
exciting of a movie to do a podcast about. So we're going the ET route. But I have seen in the theater when one of the re-releases a
Yeah.
couple years ago. I took my daughter to see it in the
Oh,
theater.
nice. Yeah, they released it for some of the anniversaries. I know that they put it out in theaters. Yeah, this one was kind of actually the first movie I think I remember actually seeing. Oh no. I saw Raiders in the theater, so maybe that was the first movie I actually remember seeing in the theaters. But this one definitely, I remember I saw this with my mom and an aunt. I think I grew up with all my aunts and my mom and my aunts and my grandma, so they always took me to movies. And this one, I think I remember seeing. Definitely seen in Town cinemas back with this. Now there's a Crunch Fitness there or something, but yeah, Santa Rosa used to have, or Town used to have cinemas, and I saw it there.
You just gave me an
And
idea. What about like a combo movie theater gym where it's first run movies, but you have like a spin class while you're watching the movie?
exactly, you have to be on some sort of machine to watch it, you know, to
Yeah, it's
power
like you
it.
guys all have to keep up this speed, or else we're shutting this thing off.
That would be actually ideal, man. Can you imagine? Make America healthy again? Yep.
I'd never see another movie. I'd be like, I gotta wait till it comes out on streaming, man. I can't do it.
Exactly. That's what I would do. Probably. I got chronic pain everywhere, so yeah, I got this. Anyways, yeah, this was because I think before, especially with the big ones like Star Wars and Superman, I think those were the two movies, the blockbuster movies that were in the zeitgeist. You know, when they become so big that they're just everywhere. I I know that I saw them in the theaters, but I don't really remember the experience because I was just so young. I think in Star Wars I was 3, and then in Superman I was 4 or 5. So this was the first. This one and Raiders were the first movies I remember seeing in the theater. So it was always a classic too. It was always something that I would put on, and it didn't come out for a long time. I don't think it came out until like maybe the early 90s, I want to say, or maybe the late 80s, like 89, 88, 89, somewhere on there. Because Spielberg wanted to have this kind of ability to kind of bring it back out and make more money in the theaters. And he would do that constantly. But I mean, this stayed in the theaters for, I think, over a year in its first run. So I don't know, like it, do you when you watch it now, like what does it have that same effect on you, or is it just kind of one of those movies that you're just like, oh, this is cool, yeah, whatever, and then you just don't think about it anymore?
Yeah, it's one that if they released it today, I think it would just be white noise.
Yeah.
It's just gonna come out and poof. Even if it had Spielberg's name on it, I feel like it just wouldn't be a big event. But back then, the practical effects of it, the story
Yeah.
of it, it being geared more towards children, but also something adults could enjoy. It wasn't, talking down and baby talk type
Yeah.
children's movie.
Well,
So I
yeah.
think that had it going for it. But if it came out today, I don't think it would be pomp and circumstance for it.
Yeah, I think it's just a new age today because I think, Spielberg had this back then at least. He kind of geared a lot of his movies with a lot of this kind of, which is one of his kind of trademarks, is telling stories from a kid's point of view. And look, when I was watching it last night, I realized how much, or I've forgotten how much that this movie was basically like, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid in elementary school, when I would get bored in class or something, I would just imagine these adventures I would get in. Like, I think Toy Soldiers did this where, I would think about like this, this army would invade like the school and I would go around and be like a ninja and defeat. And this movie kind of gives you that little, or that kind of feeling, or at least for me, of kind of what a boy's adventure if he found an alien and it came to him. And because so much of this is told from Elliot's point of view, even so much so is that there's not even, besides the mother, there's no adults. And when they are, they're you only see like the back of them, or you see them from the hip, because he filmed this from a child's point of view. So all the angles are low angle, the eyesights are low for kids. And there's even a deleted scene where Harrison Ford plays, I think, a principal. But the way they filmed it was that he was in shadow. You can only see his hands and you hear his voice. So a lot of this is really kind of a boy's version of an adventure, and I feel like that's why at the time it hit so well, because I think we all have those. Did you have those kind of that kind of imaginary things in your head that you would do that, or is that just me?
I think it's you, and I think you should be evaluated. Have some. Our sponsor this week is.
Yes, ClearSpace or Headspace, whatever that is. Squarespace, that's what it said.
No, I think that's in a lot of kids' minds. I can't speak to female children, but I can speak to male children.
Yes.
I was one at one point, and some would argue I still am. But yeah, your mind is always going to, what if this happened? What if that happened? These kind of fun things that are just completely imaginary. And you are living in a world where it's the child's view versus the parent's view. And like you said, Spielberg does that really well in this. It's like a Charles Schultz doing the wah 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 wah
Right.
wah.
Exactly.
Parents have a different view. Kids are open and willing to see things, and parents just don't. Not to jump ahead to different scenes, but
No, go ahead.
when the mom is in the kitchen and ET's right there, and she just doesn't notice. She's messing with the dry cleaning and putting groceries away, and she's kind of pushing off her daughter, like, "Okay, I'll talk to you in a minute. Let me get these put
Yeah.
away." And just doesn't see ET, and to me, that symbolized the whole movie of there's a parent's view of the world and there's a kid's view of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And that, even the teacher, when he's at school, I mean, the teacher, when you said the wah wah, I mean, it basically could be that, because you never see the teacher's face. You see him handing Elliot his test or whatever. He's looking at his drawing or whatever it was, and it's always just, it's kind of like that. I don't know, just that thing of like kids. This is all kids' world. This is a kid's kind of view of getting drunk, and a kid's view of whatever it is, whatever they're going through. And I remember there's the scene where they send him out to wait for the pizza, right? And he gets the pizza and he's walking back to the house, and he hears something in the backyard. And I every time I watch this, I catch myself, because I'm always at that point, I'm always thinking like, Ellie, just go in the house, But then I forget. I'm like, oh no, this is a kid. This is what kids do. They don't they're not their lives, or the way they live their lives, isn't linear always. It's always like, what's that over there? What's this over here? Their attention span. So I always have to kind of cut that off and watch this as a kid. And in that same vein, like when I'm watching this movie, it takes me back to being a kid. I mean, at least for me, because I remember the kind of the wonder and the way that when I got out of this movie, you would talk, or any movie in this kind of genre, is that you'd go home and you would tell your friends, or you would act it out, or you would just be so enamored with the littlest things. Like I remember Reese's Pieces. I got into that. I'm not a candy guy, but because this movie was so popular, I got into eating Reese's Pieces and getting ET everything, not everything, but just like a pillow or something. Or it's weird because this was the beginning of, and I was talking to Toby about this on the Raiders of the Lost Ark podcast, which was, we kind of take for granted that this idea that these movies like this, oh, and this is how it's always been. But this was such a change from like at least from the 70s, of how movies were getting made, because back in the 70s it was a little more low key. You had a lot of anti-heroes, you had a lot of protagonists that were in the gray area. And so with Jaws and Star Wars and even Superman, this kind of movie started to kind of proliferate into this genre unto itself, which was like the big tentpole. Spielberg was really good at making those movies, Lucas. And so I don't know. What's your take on that, man? Because I know that you and I are kind of in the relatively same area of age. Do you ever think about how you kind of always maybe take it for granted, like this is how movies should be made in terms of the blockbuster type movies?
I think I think there it was a Quentin Tarantino quote that was talking about the swing and the pendulum of movies, and you have
Yeah,
the big chunks of time when movies, were creative and instrumental in pop culture, and then it swings away from that, and then it swings back to it. And this would have been, this was a time when it was creative and it was out of the box and it was larger than life,
yeah,
and that's what you had during this time. Like even Jaws and Raiders, those were bigger, larger than life movies
yeah.
that were able to come out at that time. I will say, E.T. coming out was kind of hell for my dad because his initials were E.T., Edward Taylor. And so people at work would be like, "Hey E.T., hey E.T."
You'd just be like, God.
Hey, I'll go kill you guys someday.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's that the idea that this Spielberg was kind of, I feel like he kicked it off with Jaws, and I feel like movies like this became the norm, and like I was saying in the last podcast, there's a lot of movie critics and just kind of writers and opinions of the time that were saying, "Oh my gosh, I don't know, I don't like where all this special effects movies are going," and they were kind of hesitant to kind of jump into this. Where I think Lucas and Spielberg, they came from the same. They were hanging out. They were buddies. Spielberg was like one of the first fans of Star Wars before all the special effects were added, and everybody else was like, I don't know what you're doing here, man. So I mean, they always had this kind of closeness to them. They always kind of knew each other really well. So I think, I don't know, it just seems like this type of movie was always, it was just brand new. And I think especially for me at the time, it was it was kind of becoming the norm when I was started going to the movies when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And so I think that's why really I think it had an effect, because you don't really see, like you said before, like you don't really see movies like this anymore, because if they are, that this would be classified as a kids movie, and it would be on Disney, and it would just be on Nick at Night, probably, or Nick or whatever, Nick Jr. or something, and it would just kind of get lost in the wash, I would say.
Yeah, the kids are in danger, right? And you
Yeah.
don't see a lot of real danger in kids movies
Yeah.
nowadays. It's all fabricated stuff. And you have, as far as the blockbuster and special effects of it goes, this wasn't like a Harryhausen Clash of the Titans type special
Right.
effects
Right.
thing. Like there, a lot of the stuff is practical in there, and it's
Yeah.
really
Lots of it.
grounded there. So it's not like crazy flying through space stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot of grounded stuff, a lot of realistic people in suits, people doing the hands, climbing underneath desks and having just
Yeah.
gloves on to come up and do the hands for the front part of ET.
Oh yeah.
Just a lot of those effects.
Yeah, and I think, and I feel like it's a lot of it is a child's view of danger
Mhm.
too. It isn't like this kind of violent type of thing. It's more of the spacesuit guys and all the plastic and everything. It's just kind of this invasion of, especially in the third act, their house becomes, invaded basically. And so you have this kind of loss of innocence in terms of where they live and how they live in their house, where you're supposed to feel safe. Now all these people have invaded it, in terms of, you could take that as an alien kind of metaphor of an alien invasion. Well, these people or whatever danger has invaded. And so
Yeah.
I think, go ahead. Go ahead. I don't know
I was
if
gonna
you,
say, yeah. Tell me the scariest part of it isn't when the spacesuit guys come in.
yeah,
That's the scariest part of the entire movie, and it has to do with humans and not the alien.
yeah, exactly. And it's kind of the way, that in the third act, you finally start to see it's this invasion of the danger, and they take off their masks and they're trying to save ET, and you finally see everybody's faces. And that's what I think kind of is I guess the strength of it, because you see these people after ET, because in the beginning, you see ET has kind of wandered off too far, right, from his family, and these men are chasing him, and there's just this guy with a keychain, and his keys are always jingling, so that kind of represents the main, I guess, antagonist, I suppose. And you finally get to see his face, but he's not dangerous at all. He's actually kind of Elliot grown up. I've been waiting my whole life to see this. I'm glad he found you, because this is kind of what he's given up to find an alien, or to find whatever he was looking for. He had to join this dangerous thing or whatever. But yeah, so I, you know, as I said in the opening, there's a lot of Spielbergisms in here that I wanted to kind of touch base on real quick, which was he always frames stories from a child's point of view. So you got Close Encounters, Empire of the Sun. I know you have a couple too that you were talking about, his previous movies. Did you want to talk about those at all, or add to that kind of
Yeah.
the Spielbergisms?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the interesting part is how they got to ET
Yeah.
from Close Encounters, right?
Yeah.
Because the Columbia Pictures wanted a sequel really bad. They were like, this was a hit. Let's get another one out there." And Spielberg was like, "This is a complete movie. Like, this is
Yeah.
as complete as it gets." But he owed them a project, so he started developing something called Night Skies. And he still wanted to tell a story about his parents' divorce and him going through that as a child.
Mm-hmm. Which shows up in a lot of his movies. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of his movies tie into that. And so the next movie was going to tie into that, but also have an alien aspect to it. It was going to be inspired by the Kelly Hopkinsville alien encounter, which
Yeah.
are now they're deemed cryptids. They're the Hopkinsville goblins.
Oh.
And it was this remote house with a family that were just terrorized by these goblins or aliens at night one night. And you can look up, cryptozoology and stuff. I love Bigfoot and all those things. So they've become their own little kind of Bigfoot type crypto, not money crypto, but cryptozoology. And so Night Skies was going to be about a family terrorized by a group of extraterrestrials, and it was going to be kind of like a sequel, but not a sequel. It's like aliens come to the planet, and there's a group of them, but there's one friendly one named, I think his name was Buddy, who is going to be, helping the family. And then while these other ones were attacking the family in their house. And he got John Sayles from The Howling to write the script. Rick Baker was hired to design the effects, off of
John
American
Sayles.
Werewolf.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
The budget was going to be about $15 million, which was mid-range at that time.
Yeah.
But it got a real horror tone to it. And Spielberg got kind of more uncomfortable with that. He wanted something more personal and emotional, which is, you can tell in E.T. He wanted it tied to the feelings of loneliness after the divorce, and that feels like it drives him a lot. So he pivoted to just the alien that befriended the child and adopted that into E.T. And then Night Skies, a family under siege by unseen forces, suburban setting, supernatural chaos, that actually was repurposed into Poltergeist.
Nope.
So Poltergeist became that, and that's why he was supposed to be involved with Night Skies. So that was going to transfer to Poltergeist, and then that's when Toby Hooper had to get involved because he couldn't be involved with directing a movie at the same time.
Right.
And the ET script was purchased by Universal for I think $1 million, which from Columbia, because Columbia was like, no, we're not really into this.
Yeah.
We want more of the horror, the big scare type thing, and they said. Universal was like, okay, we'll buy it for $1 million, but you can't direct anything else. while you're directing this. And that's why they had to get Toby Hooper involved in Poltergeist, even though rumor is that Spielberg was there more than he wasn't, right?
Yeah.
And filmed a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But he really just wanted to get that divorce story out there, and that's how they got to it. They went from they went to creating Night Skies and that splitting up the DNA of it to the horror side of it to Poltergeist and the heart side of it to E.T.
And even in Poltergeist too, I think you see a lot of, like, I think we were talking about it on the remake pod that we did, and whatever this is called. You just feel, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this movie, and it's the same as E.T. or same as Poltergeist. You know, you have the neighborhood, you have that familiarity, you have the safe spot of your house. It just, the invasion of it. And but yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, tales, or I don't know if they're true. You know, this one obviously you could probably take as true, but you know, I also heard a story that on Close Encounter, Truffaut, who was in that Francois Truffaut, who was a French New Wave director who everybody loved, was in that movie, told Spielberg, you have to make a movie about an alien that and a kid or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. And that was kind of the seed that was planted. And I think that that's where everything starts right there, is that this thing of extraterrestrials and all this kind of thing that you see in ET kind of starts to take shape. And it's great too, because in 72, so Jaws was in 75, Close Encounters is 77, this is 82. So 10 years before, he did this TV movie, and I just saw it last week. It was on Creature Features. It's this YouTube channel that they play like B-movie type of horror movies. This was on there, and it was something, it's called Something Evil, and it's something that Spielberg did for TV, and it came out in 72. And this was off of his kind of night gallery. He did a bunch of night gallery episodes, and Marcus Welby, and he did a bunch of TV stuff, TV episodes. And so they wanted him to do a TV movie. And so he did this. And it's a little kind of cheap budget movie about this couple that moves into this haunted house and all this shit starts happening. But you see which is another Spielbergism I wanted to get into, but you see all of this kind of the blocking and the staging of all the scenes, and it's a lot of camera movement. It's a lot of, at least has a scene where there's a party going on. So you have a lot of conversations going, and Spielberg is just so good at doing that sort of thing. And I think that's where he starts to develop this, because in E.T., there's a lot of camera movement, and there's a lot of staging to where, you know, there's a lot of split focus, right? So you have one in the foreground, the background's just, you know, in focus just as well. So you have a lot of these things that are starting to come to fruition in E.T. and it's such a great movie to, if you're a Spielberg lover like I am, it's just a great movie to kind of watch and learn about the art of filmmaking. So yeah. So another one is the Suburban Americana, which is the Spielbergian suburb, which we kind of touched on. It's a safe middle class neighborhoods that become extraordinary through wonder or danger. Poltergeist is the same thing. And E.T., it's the background, the backyard, the school, the forest setting makes it feel authentic. And then what you touched on was the broken family, the absent father type of thing that he does. And which happens in Jaws, Close Encounter, War of the Worlds, even, you know, with Tom Cruise later on. Let's see. And then there's Awe and Wonder, the Spielberg face. I guess that's the thing. I didn't know that was the thing, but I was looking, the deep dive for this was kind of this Spielberg face where they're looking up at something and they're bathed in light. And I guess in Jurassic Park, Close Encounters. Yeah. Is there anything that you kind of caught as someone who, I mean, you love movies and the art of making them? Does anything catch your eye in this ET and how it was made?
Nothing, you know, and it's tough to think about it going back, right? Because it's always just been ET to me, so it's not like, you know, it was anything crazy for the production side of it when I was younger. It was a movie. It was a movie about an alien that I could love and I could buy merchandise of and and quote, you know, to my friends. So
well, that's another Spielbergian thing. I mean, to make these blockbuster movies, but to make them with kind of the care and the technicality of maybe a smaller movie. He's able to kind of make these kind of big blockbuster. I mean, look at what he did with Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List. He's able to take these kind of things that he does in these movies and bring them into a subject matter that's really worth kind of diving into. And it pulls you into the movie. Really is what it does.
Yeah, and I had an easier side of being able to feel like I was in movies because I was a Caucasian male, right, as a child. So there were a lot of movies that I could just instantly copy paste myself into. It wasn't difficult for me, but the ones that had things like an alien or an adventure or whatever, those would be the ones that I would lean towards.
Yeah.
Of course, because you want that little bit of adventure, and that's what Spielberg seemed to do well here. I mean, you go
Oh,
from
yeah.
E.T., the adventure in E.T., and then you go to like Goonies, and Goonies has just bumped it up completely.
Yeah.
It's all adventure, a little bit of heart, and then adventure to it. So it's a very similar model to.
And that's interesting because even the ones that he doesn't direct, like you said, Goonies was directed by the guy that did Superman, Richard
Mhm.
Donner.
Yep.
It still has his fingerprints all over it.
Mhm.
This kind of broken family or the kids that are leading the way, the adventure is again. He brought up a good, kind of comparison, which is Goonies. The kids. It's a kid's adventure looking through the kid's eyes at this,
Mhm.
and that's just what he does so well. Which brings me to something that I really wanted to talk about, which is his John Williams collaboration. I mean, it, I think a lot of there's this kind of what is it called symbiotic relationship that these two have because I think that Spielberg brings out the best in John Williams and John Williams brings out the best in Spielberg. I mean, there's things in this movie I think that have the typical John Williams kind of his ability to kind of milk the scene of emotion, whatever emotion it is, it just highlights whatever, the scene is kind of calling for. But then you take Williams out of that and he still is able to do that. I mean, look what he did with Star Wars, Indiana Jones. He even scored this movie Born on the 4th of July, which is Oliver Stone movie. And the music, the main motif in that one is just beautiful. So, I mean, do you feel that too when you listen to like not only Spielberg, but just John Williams? Like, what's your opinion on him?
Yeah, I mean, John Williams is everywhere, right? It's in our DNA from our childhood. Every movie had that John Williams score. One story that I had read about this one, a lot of times they'll edit the movie and then they'll score it afterwards, right? So that they're
Yeah.
making the music to tie in with the movie. With the bike chase at the end of this, it was the opposite. John Williams did the score and Spielberg edited it to tie in with the John Williams part of it that was there first.
Wow. Yeah.
That kind of shows you how important John Williams is to Spielberg and to
Yeah.
movies in general, and how much weight and gravitas he provides to a movie when he's part of it.
Jeez. Yeah, that's incredible because usually, yeah, like you said, usually it's the other way around. It's like, well, here's the scene, so write some music around this. That's cool. I didn't know that. I didn't. That's something I didn't really. Let me write this down so I don't even. Yeah, I mean that's incredible. I mean, and you think about like he's getting older, and again, this is something I think I don't know if we talked about it or if it was me and Toby talked about it, but we're reaching a part of life, us, you and me, where like a lot of these people are kind of getting to the point where they're retiring or they're not actually active in movie making anymore, and this goes back to even Spielberg and George Lucas is like I remember this time. Like this was I don't know how to describe it, but it's like these are I guess what the kids say canon events of this time, right? Like I would go see E.T. or I would go see Indiana Jones in the theater, and it was new. Spielberg was in his prime. He was making these movies. George Lucas was making his movies. We were in this kind of new age of in the 80s of kind of this blockbuster age where a lot of these movies kind of took off, and it's sad to see like a lot of these getting older. We're all just getting older. It's you know um a couple months ago Michael Madsen had passed away, and I thought, oh, geez, these are I talked about this in an earlier podcast. It's like I think it was with Val Kilmer when he passed. It's like you kind of look at these movies and they're forever this young, you know. Peter Coyote, who plays the guy that has the keychain in ET. He's in this movie called A Walk to Remember. It came out in the early 2000s. But he, you know, he's getting older, and he look at him and Dee Wallace and even Drew Barrymore and Henry Thomas. They're all these young kids that are now our age, and now they're, you know, making good movies still, you know, or whatever they're doing. And it's like, man, does it? Do you feel that? Do you feel any sort of like this mortality kind of thing where you're kind of reminded of it when you watch these movies at all?
Well, absolutely. Like
Yeah,
you see the people and you go, oh, they were so young then, or you're like, oh, look at them. I didn't realize they were in this because they looked so different. Like your brain didn't
yeah,
click from, oh, they were in this when I was a child, and now they're in this series or a movie that I love. It's yeah, it's a wave, it's a mirror of us and our
yeah,
mortality. You're looking at it and you're like, these people are getting older, which means I'm getting older. A lot of times, you know, the people that I would look up to in movies would be a little older than me, right? Like
yeah,
there would be these
yeah.
instances where I was like about the same age. Now this is, you know, roughly about the same age because, like you said, it came out '82, and I would have been 2 at the time, and
Right.
I don't know how old he was in this. Maybe 8, maybe 6,
Yeah,
7. What was
like
Henry
8,
Thomas?
7 or 8 maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't look, but yeah.
So I was more on, you know, I was closer to Drew Barrymore age than his age when it
Yeah,
came out. But when I first started seeing it, I would have been about his age. So
yeah,
I run into a lot of times that there's people that those classic movies that they are already just a little bit older than me, you know, maybe 5, 10 years older than me.
yeah,
But it is just a mirror. It's just looking into the future, and it's like, yeah, there are these people, and these people are going to pass. These people are going to
yeah,
go, and but at least they've got these huge streamable tombstones, right?
yeah,
You don't have to go visit them at their grave. You could probably at Hollywood Cemetery, but you don't need to. You've got them at your fingertips. You can watch any of these things. Someone dies like Val Kilmer, you can instantly hop onto streaming and pull, you know, 5 out of your top 8 Val Kilmer movies just on streaming, probably for something you're already paying for monthly.
yeah. I mean, that's you know, he's forever encapsulated into these roles. So like if you watch Tombstone or Top Gun or Real Genius or whatever movie that you're at the doors, it's that almost like a time capsule of that time, not necessarily of the movie subject matter, but just of that time, you know, because The Doors, which we should do on this channel, on Gonna See My Friends. I love that movie. But that movie, you know, it man, that movie when I watch that movie, excuse me, you know, it takes me back to that time of when I saw that movie in theaters and the zeitgeist during that time or whatever was going on in my life of that time. And so when I watched ET doing it for this deep dive of this, it brought me back to being a kid. It brought me back not only being a kid, but Henry Thomas kind of captured what it was to be kind of this kid of being everything is just so dramatic. Everything is so big. Everything is there's it just the way he acts, which he acts like a kid. And, you know, without the ET, without all this other stuff, he, you know, you take all that away, he's still being a kid, you know. And I remember wanting that kind of drama in my life when I was a kid because I was just so bored and, you know, I had a horrible childhood, not a horrible, but I had a lot of challenges in my childhood which required me to kind of live in my head and have all these kind of fantasies or daydreams or whatever you want to call them. And so when I watch this now, it's like, oh man. And so not only is it about kind of getting older, I always feel like when I'm caught up in a lot of shit in my head or whatever, maybe I have a bad week, bad day, whatever it was, you know, this kind of reminds me when I watch this movie of like, remember when you were a kid and you used to like daydream about people invading your school and you were I still remember that was a big thing. I don't know why. This also, and this is kind of long-winded, sorry, but this also kind of started me. I lived in Sacramento and my grandparents and everything lived in Healdsburg. And so on weekends, not every weekend, but maybe once a month, we would go from Sacramento to Healdsburg. And so we would take 50 and which I guess turns into 80. Is that you're better at this than I am.
Mm. I got GPS. I turn left when it tells me.
Well, you go through Vallejo, or not, you go through not Vallejo, you go through Vacaville, and then you go through Fairfield. And then Fairfield, you would take Highway 12. And now it's like a 4-lane highway, two in each direction. Back in the day, it was a 2-laner and with a cliff, and you know, you would go through Napa, like the way we went to when we went
Mhm.
and saw Superman. We would take that, and I would just daydream that me and two of my cousins were on bikes, and we got to get to Healdsburg for some reason. I don't know what it was, but I would just daydream about us riding bikes, and a big part of that was because of this movie. I mean, the action pieces in this movie. What are some of those that stick out in your mind in this movie in terms of the action pieces?
You know, I have to wax poetic for a second
Yeah,
before getting
please.
into that because you're talking about it taking you back to a time and place. And I really feel the closest we're ever going to get to time travel is movies.
Yeah,
And that's twofold. Number one, movies that are made about a different time that you can watch and be like, I remember that outfit. I remember that car. I remember that music being played. When you're watching the movie itself is taking you back. But more so time traveling because where you were in your life when that movie came out or when you saw that movie. And
yeah,
so a lot of this is it just ties in because we were children at that time seeing a movie that was about a child having an adventure. But it's you double there because you also have the aspect of your family life at that time and what was your life like when you saw E.T., when you saw that movie. And you can do that with so many movies. It's like they say, if you go on a trip or something, pick a new album, pick a new type of music, pick a new artist, and listen to that artist because from there forward you'll remember that trip, the sights, the smells, the tastes of it when you hear that song. And it's very similar to movies. You can jump to a movie and be like, I saw that with those people, or I saw that at this theater that's no longer there. That's what movies do. It's time travel. It's the closest we're ever going to get. They say if there's ever time travel, you can go back but not forward, and movies help you go back whenever you want to.
well
Um,
said.
so,
Yeah,
but as far as action stuff in this, the action and the humor is what I take away from this movie. The bike scenes. You had a bike. Everybody had a bike, right? And so we had that freedom of riding our bike. That's a little bit taken away from kids nowadays because we tend to helicopter a little too much, even though we have more ability to track them, right? You and I could go out on our bikes and not come back till late evening and it'd be fine. Our parents wouldn't really be concerned about us. Now, if my kid did that, I'd be so worried. I'd be just checking the app on my phone to see where she was every 20 minutes.
yeah,
But
isn't that? Yeah,
for us as kids, we could hop on a bike, be like, I'm going to Danny's house. And your parents are like, okay, great. And you'd be on
they're
your
like
bike.
good.
Yeah, you could be like, I will Google Map stuff from my childhood when I grew up, in the Boston area. And I'll be like, yeah, we'd go from here to here. And I'll look at it, I'll be like, that felt like that was so far. And it was like a mile and a half. But it felt like it was, going from the Shire to Mordor to me. That's what it felt like, going from my house to Arlington Center or something like that, or going to Davis Square. It felt like it was this big trek because I was on my bike and I was doing my own thing.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
movie, the action scenes for me are those bike scenes.
Those bike scenes are amazing, dude. Especially the one where the cops are following them on the street, but they're going down those hills.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel like that we lived right on the levee in Sacramento. So we had this like neighborhood, and then you had the big levee, and then you could either walk on the levee or you can go on the other side and there's a bike trail, and then there's the river, the American River. And it just reminded me because the kids would cut out like these, I don't know, bike trails with
Mm-hmm.
jumps and turns in between the walking trail and the river. And it just reminded me of just being a kid and living on your bike. Like you said, you would just get on your bike and you would just go. And I did the same thing. I mean, I lived right next to Rancho Cordova. And so you would have Folsom Boulevard there, Folsom Boulevard just goes from like one end of Sacramento to the other, it seems like. And I remember riding down the levee all the way down to Rancho Cordova and then getting on the street and then riding all the way back. And I thought, man, we were gone for like 2 hours. And it was like, I don't know, the whole ride was probably like 5 miles, six
Mm-hmm.
miles. I mean, so that's like what, like 3 miles there, 3 miles back. But like you said, it just seems like it was this is big adventure. And being a kid, you're able to fill now it's like you're counting, oh, okay, Jesus, we're 2 miles out, still another two. But back as a kid, you were just riding around. You had no care. You were filling in those kind of spaces with either conversation or you were, hey, let's go over here. Oh yeah, okay. And it wasn't that big of a deal. And I think you're right, dude. This kind of takes you back to this, because I felt that watching this on especially last night. It's like, man, I miss those days sometimes. It's like, oh, gosh, I wish I could just do that now. Now it's like a chore to even get out
Yeah.
of the house
Now
sometimes.
you've got to Google and see what's parking like there. Where am I going to park? Are they going to have something that's not going to upset my stomach? Pre-look
Yeah.
at the menu. You got to do all that stuff. You would just
Yeah.
take off, and
Yeah.
like you said, you would fill the time with your friends. If you were somebody, you'd be like, "Oh man, I'm really thirsty. All right, let's go to the convenience store. Okay, great." And you
Yeah.
drive there, and you'd get a soda, or you get one of those little plastic jugs of juice that we pop the foil top of them. You'd go get a snack. You'd go back. You'd be like, "Okay, now let's go back over here. My friend from school lives over here. Let's go check
Yeah.
him on him." And you
Yeah.
drive there. You didn't know if he was there. You wouldn't call ahead and say, "Hey, are you home?" You just drive there, and you'd be like, "Yeah, if he wasn't there, he wasn't there," and then you just
Right.
drive back. You wouldn't worry about getting home. Like, I'm so far away that now I have to drive all the way back on my bike. You wouldn't be concerned about that. You'd be like, "Oh man, I should probably head home. My parents would be mad at me." And then
Yeah.
you'd start biking, trekking the 3 miles back home.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this was, you could feel the freedom that the kids in this movie had with not only having just a single working mom, right?
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
left to themselves a lot because of that, but also just the neighborhood and the height of the neighborhood. One problem I have is their driveway. Their driveway was too goddamn long. And the one scene where the oldest son backs the car out for the mother, I'm like, why would she prefer walking down that entire driveway versus just backing out herself? I know that as a teen that didn't have his license, he probably oh, I'll back it out for you. It's all exciting.
Yeah.
But as a mom, I'd be like, I don't want to walk all the way down that ramp. And then secondly, the other technical problem I had, those FBI voyeur trucks,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They need a smog check, because the amount of exhaust coming off of those things, it's like they took a giant block of dry ice and just plopped it in there. Like, that stuff is not passing its test. It's
No.
going to need some repair work.
That I didn't even. Yeah. Okay. I agree with you on that one. And also because I thought you were going with those FBI, those listening vans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, FBI back then had so much. It seems like had a lot of technical know-how. I'm sure they do now, but I'm just saying back then you didn't think of those things, or at least I didn't. Thinking, oh wow, how do they do that? Kind of things. But well, let's slip into kind of this cultural legacy that this movie
Mm-hmm.
has, and obviously the merchandising was part of. George Lucas kind of brought that to the forefront in terms of what movie studios could kind of count on. Obviously, with Indiana Jones action figures and this action figures. Did you have anything ET related when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had. I'm sure I had a plush doll. I can't recall anything specifically that I had ET, but I want to say I was probably ET for Halloween with a Ben Cooper style mask and ET's face on my chest, right? To say, look, I'm ET. I probably was ET one year. I probably had an ET themed birthday party, which would have just involved my mom cutting ET out of magazines and hanging them up around the house. That's all the extent it would be. Yeah, the merchandise was everywhere. You can, I've got merchandise here. I've got a classic ET bank, and I've got some Funko Pops, and it was all over the place. So everyone knew ET.
Yeah, I think ET even had an Atari 2600 game, which I want to say it was the cause of the downfall of the Atari 2600.
Yeah,
I think
it was they pushed it out in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So they programmed it in 5 weeks, put this game out, and it's inarguably the worst game ever. It's horrible. I remember having it, and at some point I'd like to own a copy just for the nostalgia of it. And I think if I ever met Henry Thomas, I think I'd rather have him sign that versus an ET VHS cassette, right? Because it is so iconic that it was so bad. So many were returned, over 1 million returned.
Yeah.
Is what they say, and then just buried in the New Mexico desert. which was all just urban lore until they actually dug it up and saw, yeah, there was all this. There's a documentary about it where they dug it up, they found it, and there's just all these copies of
Oh
the Atari
man,
game. But it was the
are they
downfall of
usable?
no, no, no. But it was the downfall of video games at the time. Video games were on like an upward precipice, and all that
Yeah.
that just kind of put it on a downward trajectory for a while.
Did you have an Atari 2600 at all?
I
Or
did.
you did? Okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
did. I had this game, and I did not play it much because there was no linearity to it, right? You would walk around and then you'd fall in a hole, and then you'd get yourself out of that hole somehow, and you walk around and you fall in another hole.
You know what was interesting is, and you and me have to do Gonna See My Friends podcast about this, but Cloak and Dagger 2 was a movie that came out after this, which had Henry Thomas in it. And they had a Cloak and Dagger actual game, and I never got the game. I wanted it, but I never got it. So did you ever have that game at all?
I did not, no.
Yeah,
we should do an episode where we watch the movie and play the associated game.
That would be sweet, actually. Good. Let me write that one down. Write it down. Yeah. So and you see it parodied, Family Guy to Stranger Things, and then you see it influenced on kids on bikes, adventure stories, The Goonies, Stranger Things, Super 8. Super 8 was a movie I think that was J.J. Abrams, and it was this Spielberg type of movie, which I think it was in a sense that it was a kids movie. So it was these kids leading the charge in this adventure. But I think, it gets to the point where anything with kids in it is going to be compared to a lot of Spielberg stuff, which I think is kind of unfair because, yeah, he did kind of popularize that. I think that, especially in modern times in today's age, you could do a lot more now in terms of special effects. Like you see it with Stranger Things, the what's it called? The upside down or something like that.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can kind of, I don't know if Spielberg's ever going to get away from that because he just popularized it too much. But do you think of any other kids movies that I missed? I have Goonies, Stranger Things, Super 8.
Yeah, Stranger Things completely takes from E.T., right?
Yeah.
It's the bike aspect of it. Even at the beginning, they're playing like D&D in E.T., and that's the start of Stranger Things. They're playing D&D in their basement. It's very similar, and it's definitely homage to this movie. But Super 8 was like you're trying to get that feel of seeing E.T. that first time, and movies just don't get there. Stranger Things was one small time that they got it all right, and they got all the feels there because they had other aspects to the story to draw you in. But a lot of times they just try to copy and paste it almost, and it just doesn't have the heart. The heart was the big piece of it.
I'll have to agree with you on that one because I think a lot of that happens with with Super 8. That was the talk of it. Oh, it's this kind of J.J. Abrams. Spielberg was his mentor, so obviously there was going to be a lot of comparison to that. But I just feel like it, like you said, copy and paste. And I can see where he was going, and so I supported that vision of it. But it just sometimes, as like we talk about with the superhero movies, sometimes you want it to do well, so you're kind of on board. But then after a couple of rewatches, excuse me, you kind of realize, it just didn't get there, and I wanted it to. So
if I want to see the thing that I love, I'm gonna go watch the thing that I love. Right.
Exactly.
I'm not. So you've got to give me the thing that I love plus a little bit more.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the swing and a miss with a lot of things like Super 8, where it's you just didn't give me that more aspect that I need to now say, okay, great, this is something I can watch as a standalone.
Yeah. So I agree with you on that one because there's like you just said, a lot of times I'm watching something that is comparable to this, and then you're like, well, it's just like that. I would rather just watch that. What comes to mind is Tarantino. In the late 90s, a lot of Tarantino-esque type of movies were getting made. And you were just like, I would just watch a Tarantino movie. He does it the best. But and I think that's a whole nother discussion on Tarantino. But anyways, let's get to the Klay Thompson Award. Do you have a Klay Thompson Award for this movie?
I will go with the child in the Yoda costume. Because that is such a great scene. right? We all love Halloween. We had loved it more as kids. It gets that right in this movie. The sense that you would go out. The mom's like, come back an hour after sunset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's what it'll be. Yeah, you can stay out past dark, but just don't stay out too crazily late. And just the kids going on to their own, and the very basic costumes that they had. They didn't have anything
Yeah.
crazy, just some face paint and a fake knife through the head. The whole Halloween scene interaction from E.T. thinking that the knife is real,
Oh yeah.
thinking that he's gonna heal. He's like, it's
Yeah.
real. It's fake. It's fake.
Yeah.
And just when she takes she has to run and try to get the Polaroid camera, it takes her a moment to come back. Like that was very real to those of
Yeah.
us growing up during that time. The snapshot of the flash and he just falls backwards, the humor of that. And then just him walking. He's got these giant clown shoes on to hide that he's not Gertie. And he sees the kid with the Yoda thing and he's like, home, home. And it was just a funny thing back then because it's another alien. But then they pay it forward when you get to the Star Wars prequels. And they have the little pod of ET characters just at the Senate, the Galactic Senate.
Yeah.
The fact that it just kind of adds that in and now it's canon, that has to be my award right there.
That's a good one, man. I never thought of it that way, and that's awesome. I love that. Mine is Michael, the older brother. I didn't really have an older brother. I had an older cousin who was like a brother because he lived right next door, so we played all the time. But he captured the older brother energy perfectly, man. I mean, just in every scene that he's in, it's kind of it's the older brother, the bully, but also the supportive, and later on, it's the accomplice of trying to get this ET back so he can go home, and then the bike scene. Oh, just the way when Henry or Elliot says like, "Hey, I'll have to show you this thing," and he's just like, just all these things that he does.
Yeah, he's the brother that'll give you a noogie, but if someone else gives you a noogie, he's gonna kick their ass.
Yeah, exactly. And even in the beginning when Elliot's like, he's in Mexico or whatever, and he's like, "Damn it, don't you think about anything by yourself?" Just these things, these little touches that he brings. It's just a typical older brother, and that is my Clay Thompson award for this movie.
But when when Elliot's like, you have to go find him. Like he doesn't think about it for a second. He just hops on his bike and he's out there, just going straight to the bald spot to try to find.
They're like a little team, you know, and it's like even Gertie is like, even though she messes up a bunch of times, but she's a kid, so I mean, it's like.
But she was still pivotal. She still, brought the bikes to the spot where they were going to meet up to then take off, that Halloween night.
And when I watched that scene, she's kicking the dirt, waiting for him and stuff, and it's like, man, like she's into this. Like she's really, and also I guess that's the looking up thing to your older brother, which I was a horrible older brother. So like I watch these things and I'm like, damn it, that's how you do it. Okay. Because no one has a playbook. You're just kind of figuring it out.
One extra piece of information I'd like to share with everybody about the merchandising and something that not a lot of people know about. There was actually a Michael Jackson song about E.T. called Someone in the Dark. And it was all part of a E.T. storybook album or cassette that you could purchase. It was released in 1982 in November of 82, just weeks after E.T. hit the theaters. And it was right before Thriller was dropping. It was narrated by Michael Jackson. So the album, you can find this on YouTube. So if you're an E.T. fan, I suggest you go look it up, E.T. Storybook.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, it starts with the song, and then it moves on to him narrating the story of E.T., just like those old storybook cassettes or VHS or vinyls would. And
hold on. Is it one of those stories where it goes, you'll know when it's time to turn the page when you hear?
It's not. It's not.
Okay. It's not that.
Yeah,
okay.
that's, I remember those ones clearly. There was not one of those storybook ones.
Okay.
But this was one where he would just narrate it, and you would have the John Williams music worked into it. You'd have sound effects and sound clips worked into it. But then Michael Jackson would come on in his Michael Jackson voice and narrate pieces of it. At some point in it, he, like, when E.T. goes gray and dies, Michael Jackson gets teary about it. And they leave that in, that he's choked up about it.
Make the change.
Yeah, the Someone in the Dark was written by Rod Temperton. who also wrote Thriller and
Yeah,
had lyrics
read a
by
lot of yeah.
Alan and Marilyn Bergman. But yeah, Quincy Jones produced it, and he left in those tears in the final cut because it was so moving. Um, but Michael is under contract with Epic Records, who only allowed him to do it under two conditions. Number one, the storybook couldn't be released until after Christmas, right?
Okay.
Because so it wouldn't compete with Thriller, and that Someone in the Dark could not be released as a single. So it had to be its own thing in this set. That if you got the vinyl, you would get the vinyl. You get a photo book in there with some quotes from the movie and stuff, and then you'd also get this like poster of Michael Jackson and E.T. And I'm going to have you look this up when we're done with this and use this when you're putting this reel up, because it is you ever see the picture of Nancy Reagan sitting on Mr. T's lap at like a dare?
No.
It's like a dare event.
Maybe.
It's a very 80s image, right? Because it's Nancy Reagan, it's dare, it's Mr. T. This is like top-notch 80s image. It's Michael Jackson with E.T. looking over his shoulder with his glowing finger. It is just a stamp. If you're going to get a tattoo of the 80s, it feels like you could get this done, and people go, yeah, you love the 80s.
Oh, jeez.
So those were their two rules, but MCA violated them both. They released it in November, and they sent the promo singles to radio. They sued.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we'll do that. And then it's one of those situations where it's like, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Right.
So they did this, and Epic sued them for $2 million and forced it off the shelves. But like 1 million copies had already been sold. And it hit number 37 on Billboard 200 in the US. It won a Grammy for the best recording for children.
Oh, wow.
For that year. Michael Jackson a lot of times would say that was the Grammy he was the most proud of. You can still find copies of it. If a sealed one is going to go for a couple $100, but you can find a used copy of it for under $100, maybe like $50, something like that.
Oh man, the country was Michael Jackson crazy after Thriller. I had that on vinyl. Yeah, that was. I remember that time very well. It was crazy times.
And this was definitely Spielberg going, yeah, let's do the tie-in with this movie with the biggest pop star that's going to be out there, and let's do that.
Tito, give me a tissue.
Huge
crossover.
Jermaine,
quit teasing.
It's that poster, man. It's like two pop culture aliens meeting. You look at it, you're like, which one of these is real? Which one of these is fake, man? Like, I think E.T. looks pretty realistic.
Sweet, dude. That's awesome. I don't even remember any of that, and I should, because I remember everything else from that time. It's crazy. Well, that's it. I think. Let us know what you think of E.T. Let us know what you think about Spielberg. What we missed. Maybe we missed something that you love. So let us know in the comments. Follow us on the socials, and make sure you listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music. We're even on Pandora. So if you want to listen, if you're a Pandora user and you want to listen to us, we're on there. Other than that, I want to thank Scott Taylor for being with me this week. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. Happy to be here. Come check us out on our sister podcast, whatever this is called. We talk
on the Stegar Network.
On the Stegar Network, and we talk about stuff that's just pop culture related, not specific to one movie a week. We'll talk about TV and music and all just random stuff there.
And it's on what is it? Whatever this is called, podcast. You got to check it out. It's fun. It's a nice pairing with this. Anyways, we'll see you again next week. And until then, take care, guys.